All right, so welcome back. And what we are going to do in this particular video is kind of do a very quick overview of the tools that we will be using to write our first line of code. Right, so we will look at Anaconda distribution of Python and the various tools that we installed in the previous lectures. So let me go on and fire up Anaconda. And this is called Anaconda Navigator, and as soon as you start the tool you will see a couple of options. Right, so this is how it looks like. So you see that by default it has a couple of things on the first home screen, right? And if you see these buttons, there is either the launch option or install option. And if you have install option in Jupyter, go ahead and definitely click on it and install Jupyter Notebook, because that is basically the primary tool that we will be using to write code. Okay, now this is kind of the navigator starting point, right? This is the place from where you start launching tools. And before we go further into it, I just wanted to walk you through some of the options available, right? So learning is it has a rich set of documentation, different reference guides, tutorials, NumPy documentation, and so on and so forth. And you will find this to be extremely useful when we start discussing some concepts in data science and machine learning. So definitely have a look at that and read a few things. There is also a good community where you can participate, and these are all forums, and definitely have a look at that as well. All right, so what we're going to do is right now, and we'll cover some of them in the oncoming lectures, but we're going to particularly focus on Jupyter. So let me go ahead and launch that. And once I do that, you'll see that this opens up in your web browser. So this is a web browser based tool, right? So what I'm going to do is, this is kind of just showing you, your default path. You can definitely go to the navigator and change your default path. I'm going to create a folder, and I'll just call that as, got created somewhere here. Let's see. Hopefully. Okay, here, this one. So I'll go ahead and just rename this, and I'll call this as Python programs. Okay, so we have a folder ready, and what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go into that folder and I'm going to create a new Python 3 notebook. And as soon as I do that, it kind of launches this new tab, right? So let me just rename this to my first hello world program, something like this. All right, so we have launched this. It gets launched in web browser. Now the cool thing is that all your interactions are going to be through this web browser, and that's a cool thing that I like, right? So and let me show you a couple of things, a couple of these options and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and first type our first line of code. I'm going to say print hello world. And what I'm going to do is, if I just press the enter key, it will go to the new line. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control and enter, and it will actually execute that line of code and output hello world, right? So definitely practice a few things in Python, because we will be going a little bit faster. I'll definitely explain the code and stuff like that, but this is how a typical Python program and the Jupyter workbook looks like, right? And now there are a couple of other options available here. And the first thing I wanted to tell you is about shortcuts, right? So if you press the H key, it actually opens up all the Jupyter shortcuts, right? So for instance, I could just say, let's say this one, insert cell below, and then it kind of inserts another cell, and I'm going to call this as, say, hello world 2, and I could just say control and enter, and it will output that. As against that, I could just press the H key, and if you see here, the letter B is the insert cell below, right? And in order to do that, there are two ways, right? So if you see this particular cell becomes green, that means it is active right now and you're able to type. So basically if you type B, it'll actually go ahead and show the letter B, and it will not actually insert a new cell. So what you should do is you should press the escape key, make it blue, and now type B, and then it goes ahead and adds a new row or adds a new cell. And to navigate between cells is pretty easy. You could just use your up and down arrow keys, go to the cell, press enter, and then start modifying it, right? So this is kind of how we will be using it. Now, one cool thing about this particular notebook is that it also you can type in some Python code, and also you can type in some markup, right? So now what I mean by that is, let's do something like this. Oops, enter my first Python program, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to markdown. Now if I press control and enter, it will actually show this as a normal HTML or a markup language. So let me press enter and make some modifications, right? So I could just put this as bold, oops, and things like that. So a lot of stuff you can do. It's a combination of, you can write your code as well as your programs, and pretty much if you think about it, I have been using Google Docs to kind of store my presentations or so-called notes. I could just do it lecture 1 and then some code, lecture 2 some code, and things like that as well, because all I have to do is just put some markup over here, and then I can kind of write my code as well. So I can continue writing my code, press the button key, B, and then I could just continue with my code, right? So some shortcuts here that we talked about. Definitely play around with this. This is very, very high level at this point, but I'll try to be more verbal when I start typing some code. Definitely for the next lecture, I would say read up on what is the import statements, what are modules, what are functions, how do you import a module, and things like that. Again, we'll try to keep it simple for now before introducing more complexity, but definitely read more about Python or take a brief Python course so that these things don't come in your way of learning machine learning, right? Because that is the whole purpose of this course. We're going to walk through some algorithms and stuff like that, so we won't be too much focusing on just the Python aspect. Having said that, I think we are ready to start taking some data, applying to an algorithm, watching the output, the same things that we talked about in the previous few lectures. So in the next lecture, we are going to exactly do that. So see you in the next lecture.